Investing in the property market has always been a solid way for people to build wealth. However, choosing the right property and avoiding simple mistakes can be difficult. The more you know about the industry, the better equipped you're going to be to make smart choices when building your portfolio. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Reece, and in today's video, I'm going to talk about what investment grade property is and why I believe off-the-plan homes do not make good investments. Investment grade property, in simple terms, is property that appreciates somewhere around about 4 to 5% more than inflation each year. Over the past 20 years, inflation has sat somewhere below 3%, in Australia in particular. If you're from a different country, look up the inflation rate, apply exactly what I'm about to explain to you to your own situation. This would mean that an investment that you have would need to grow between 6 to 8% to be classified as investment grade property. This would also see your investment roughly doubling in value every 10 years. Now you can narrow down what drives the price of property up down to two characteristics. Number one, a property's value is the summation of two things. It is the land value and the building that sits on it, combined. Super complex stuff, right? But out of those two being land and the building that sits on it, the land value is the thing that generally appreciates over time, whereas the building that sits on it is the thing that generally depreciates in value over time, giving us characteristic number one, land value. The second characteristic is undersupply. Again, this is super easy to grasp. If there is demand, meaning lots of people want to buy a property, the value is going to go up. There are more buyers who are willing to bid on the price to make it go up, the value goes up. If the demand is low or there's no demand at all, the value is going to go down. It's incredibly difficult to sell something to people who aren't interested in buying what you have to sell. And this again relates into two different categories, one being the architectural design of the house and the location. Some examples that would make the location of a property more desirable would be that property being located near things like beaches, parks, schools, shopping centers, public transport, and the opposite, it being located further away from things like airports and heavy bus routes, just to name a few things off the top of my head. Now, you probably already know this. Using a bit of common sense, you would have been able to put two and two together, and you would have been able to tell me what I've just told you. But it's a good recap, and it's relevant to the next part of this video that I'm going to talk about. The thing that's really important to understand here is that both of these characteristics need to be present within a property for it to be classified as a good investment. And this is where I chime in with my opinion on off-the-plan builds and new builds. Off-the-plan builds, as in buying property before it's actually constructed, and new builds such as townhouses or complexes where they've built multiple of the same house in a row, almost never make good investments. I have read countless books and articles where this point gets made. Countless, that's a bit of an exaggeration. I've read plenty of books and articles where this point gets made. And I have to say that I strongly agree with it. Why? Because these types of builds compromise these two fundamental rules, both of them, the two fundamental rules that I've just mentioned. In these types of builds, you are generally paying for the building value and not the land value proportion. As I've just discussed, out of the two components that make up the value of a property, being the building and the land, the building is the thing that generally depreciates. Therefore, we are already compromising characteristic number one because you're paying for the thing that is the thing that depreciates. The way that they typically compromise characteristic number two is that they are generally built and located in large complexes or developments, and they generally are built to look very similar, if not identical. And to add to that, they are often built in locations that are generally undesirable. I'll use just one example, a main road, because this land is easy for developers to pick up because generally it's undesirable. So if they can buy a house for cheap, subdivide it into 2 blocks or even 3 or even 4, and then build lots of houses there, it's going to be cheaper for them to do that process, and then they can sell these houses to people who are willing to pay for them. Now, if you've made it this far into the video, excellent. This is the part where I truly believe I have some strong points and I truly believe this to be true. So this is my opinion, but definitely pay attention now. This is where it gets a little bit more interesting, and it's not going to go for that much longer, but it gets a little bit more interesting here. And while we segue, don't forget to like and subscribe. It definitely helps the channel out. Because these properties have only recently come onto the market, being new builds, meaning no one has ever purchased them or sold them, there is no proof. They have not proven themselves to provide good capital growth over time. The way that these houses are designed and built is to optimize that first sale, meaning after that first sale, any consideration to resale has been thrown out the window because the builders are only interested in designing a property that looks good for you, the end user. Obviously, it's not going to be a pile of crap, but for resale purposes, they are not interested in that. Once they have made that initial sale, that's it. They're done. They don't care. They made their money and now they are walking away from that project. And I'm going to kind of generalize here, so don't obliterate me in the comments. Just understand the point that I'm trying to get across. This in turn will mean that the builder is generally in it for the short term and not the long term, which means the build will probably suffer wear and tear far sooner than a quality build. And that's ultimately a result of the builder trying to build the cheapest possible house that they can get away with. Again, that's totally generalizing. I know they have standards they need to meet, but they will use the cheapest possible materials they can, as long as it looks good, for that initial purchase. And there's not a lot of thought going into the wear and tear over the next 30 to 50 years, which unfortunately the person buying these houses will be the ones who have to deal with it, because they are going to walk away from that deal with all the money they needed to make for that property. I personally have learned a lot about property and investing into investment properties over the last 20 years of my life. My parents did it for a living for a long time. They taught me quite a lot and I've branched out and learned a lot more myself. This is one thing that hits home. This is one video that I really wanted to make. I'm not trying to shit on developers and builders and stuff like that. They're businesses at the end of the day. I'm merely trying to get the point across that you need to think about these things because it will make a difference when you're looking at building a portfolio. If you're looking to buy an investment property, it's something that you should totally understand, and it's something that might help you when you go into this process of making a decision to build a portfolio like this. And to wrap up today's video, just keep in mind that just because you have access to some government grants or maybe some liquid cash, it doesn't necessarily mean that investing into any piece of property is going to be a good investment. You need to really understand this space. It is a long-term process. Like for most people, it's going to be 30 years of their life to pay off these mortgages, depending on your situation and the plan you put in place and how you go about it. But just generalizing again, they are long-term commitments. Understanding everything you possibly can about them is only going to benefit you in the long run. Every piece of information is valuable, especially if you use it to invest into, we'll call it investment grade property, which is kind of what the theme of today's video was about. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you learned something. I hope I made you think, especially if you're someone going into this space. Good luck on your journey as well. And that's pretty much it. Goodbye for now. Have a good week. Have a good day. I'll say it one more time. Don't forget to like and subscribe down below, and see you in the next video.